And we're back. Did you guys have a good week off? We had a nice bye week as fans that was much needed after two pretty brutal losses to watch. And we're just fans. I imagine this team really needed the time off. With the injuries, defensive and offensive, Evan Stewart playing injured throughout the last 4 games or so. Noah Thomas hasn't been right since game one. Defensively, obviously, you have a ton of people who are out. And according to Jimbo, who spoke Monday, most of those guys are coming back, if not all of them. It was a much needed rest. It was a much needed break. And I, as a fan who has a whole life outside of football, needed this rest. So I imagine it was more than needed and welcomed and utilized by this team. Hopefully, they went back to basics. They went back to, I'm going to say the word, guys, execution. Because as much as we hate to hear that word, he's right whenever he says it was execution, because 9 out of 10 times it's just a mistake that has been killing this team. And I think the frustration with a lot of fans is that, yeah, you're saying it's execution, 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 but aren't you in charge of making sure the players execute? I think that's more so the frustration rather than blaming execution. He's right, but it's the cause of that causes, I think, a little bit of frustration. They needed to work on that, and I'm hopeful that they did. I'm hopeful they were able to reflect, watch film, and come out of this break better, because you need to be better in these big moments with these games coming up. So obviously the way it breaks down, South Carolina, 11 a.m. kickoff. Ole Miss just got announced as 11 a.m. kickoff. I'll talk about that in a second. You have Mississippi State at home, Abilene Christian at home, and then the big road game at LSU to end the season. And I'm here to suggest that A&M can win all of those games. Can win. I didn't say will win. I am also here to suggest that A&M will not lose another game at Kyle Field this year. They're going to defend home turf. South Carolina's really bad. I'll do a breakdown on them tomorrow. Mississippi State, in a down year, in a really weird era of their program, things aren't how they should be there because of the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach. A&M should be heavily favored versus both of those teams. They are favored versus South Carolina. Abilene Christian, it's a layup. Take the layup. Your two big road games are what defines the home stretch of this year. So we're going to just kind of talk about the state of the program. I'm going to talk about a couple of predictions and takes that I made about this team going into the year. I talked about things that would have to pan out for this team to reach its ceiling. Some of those things have not panned out, obviously, and I want to talk about that. I want to see how, the team's reality aligned with my hopeful vision. So I'll talk about that and just talk about these road games. What are the chances of this team? Just how important the rest of this year that 2 weeks ago, right after that Tennessee game, felt like a lost year. I don't think it's a lost year. I don't think this year's a lost cause. I think this year is still super, super important, these next 5 games, for the future of this program. And I know we hate saying next year, next year, next year, but there's always a next year, and you got to work for it. You got to work towards it. You can't just give in, and this team's not going to do that. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. It's not a super structured video. I just want to give you a lay of the land, how I feel about the program, how I feel about the team at the halfway point. It's technically not the halfway point, but it's after the big bye week, the break. So we're going to kind of break things down knowing that. But before I get into it, if you guys could please consider subscribing, that would help me greatly. Channel's been growing like crazy. I appreciate all of you guys who have been here commenting, liking, supporting. You guys have been amazing. What they say about the Aggie Network, I always heard about it as a student growing up, but to actually see it coming into fruition now, years after the fact, it's truly amazing. And I appreciate all of you Aggies and opposing fan bases who tune in, because a lot of you guys are in here too. So if you're an Aggie, if you're not, jump in. We have a lot of fun chopping it up in the comment section. I appreciate you guys. So let's get into it. So let's start off by breaking down a few takes that I had going into the year. I think they were from a video called Pivotal Players for the Season. And then I had another one about major weak points and strengths on the team. I'm going to kind of give you the highlights of them. I'm not going to break it down like take by take, but I'll give you the overall thought processes that I had going into the year, and many of you guys had, because I think the glaring holes going into the year were pretty well known and illustrated by the previous year. And first and foremost was obviously the offensive line. Specifically, the guy that I put on the spotlight and kind of highlighted in my pivotal players video was Bryce Foster. And I think the actual line that I used was, if we're sitting there at week 5 and Bryce Foster is playing at his potential, that we're probably looking at a potential 10-win team. And Bryce has had a rough year, but it hasn't just been Bryce Foster. The O-line hasn't taken that leap forward that we had hoped for. And we can debate all day whether or not it's like a terrible O-line or just an average O-line with a quarterback that can't make the most use of it. And we will. But this O-line is just hasn't taken the leap. And, going into the year, we thought there'd be a Deuce Fothery in there, Layden Robinson, Bryce Foster, the same 3 guys you were super hopeful for last year who didn't have the best year last year. Bryce Foster, of course, having the torn ACL. He couldn't really do anything about that. I mean, it happened. But the O-line just hasn't taken that leap. And I feared that would be the case. I feared that, it was so bad last year. How much better could it be this year? You're hopeful, obviously, every year that your mistakes are going to be rectified. But the other take that I had to kind of go hand in hand with that was that if A&M has plus level play from their quarterback, that could be okay if your O-line doesn't take that huge leap. I had just like this overarching feeling that if A&M had a star quarterback, that the offense was going to be fixed. And it turns out for a few games they did. And then unfortunately, Connor went down. And I think with the lackluster or the very, I don't think this, okay, backing up. O-line's not where it needs to be. I think it's just an average O-line. And I think when you go up against these really good front sevens like Alabama and Tennessee, it gets exploited. And it did. Max is not the kind of guy who can wheel and deal under duress, make quick decisions with pressure in his face like Connor could. Connor's best attribute, like physical attribute as a quarterback, in my opinion, is his release. He's also much more mobile. He's also a gunslinger. Max seems to be more of a true pocket guy who needs to see things develop, who takes an extra half second to process things compared to Connor. And, Max has his benefits. He's a pretty big guy. He has a strong arm. But we've seen under pressure, he's just not the same guy. And that's okay. It's just not going to be the best product in the world. You're going to see what you saw the last 2 weeks. And that's the unfortunate truth. Now, between those two pivotal aspects that I was highlighting, they both went the wrong way. And to me, that's clearly why they lost the last 2 games. It was O-line and quarterback. I mean, Bama, you could argue that it was just not having a good coverage guy on defense that lost the game. But with the opportunity that was there offensively that wasn't taken, you think if you have a quarterback that's even a little bit more able to perform under duress, that you may have had a different outlook. And I hate to put players on the spot. I hate to do it, but we're breaking down this team. I still think Max is a really good player. I just don't think that the hand that he's been dealt this year is very beneficial towards his skill set. And that sucks. Here's the positive that comes out of that, though. Like I said, I believe this O-line is average. Last year, they were terrible. Like over here. This year, they're just kind of right here, right in the middle. Versus a bad team, they might look pretty good, like Arkansas and Auburn. They played fine. I thought they were taking some gradual steps forward. I thought that they did better than they did versus Miami versus those 2 teams. And Miami's a they're not a great team, but they're pretty good. And I think Arkansas's front and Auburn's entire defense, not terrible. Pretty good test. Pretty good competition for that O-line to work against. And they had decent games. But as soon as they stepped into those upper echelon teams, like I said, went downhill. Now, here's the positive. Here's the good news. You're not going to face anything else like that. If you look at the numbers, it's a huge drop-off for every game compared to Alabama and Tennessee. So, obviously, it'd be great if this offensive line was awesome. They're not. But the competition lightens up for them. They're not going to look as bad as they did these last 2 weeks versus any of the 5 teams left on this schedule. I guarantee you, you will not be having like these facepalm blow-bys that we saw versus Tennessee and Bama on this offensive line. Now, there's a few assignment things and technique things that they're going to have to clean up, not taking opportunities that were there. That has to be cleaned up regardless. But as far as just being outmatched, that's off the table for the rest of this year. At least I hope so. You never know. But I saw an improved O-line compared to last year before these last two games. And I think that Max will benefit greatly from just having a lesser opposition on the defensive front going forward. So, didn't work out. It wasn't what we had hoped. But that's what we got, and it lightens up for the rest of the year. Now, I'm sorry that was very negative. The next thing is actually a positive. I said another pivotal player on this team, Edgerrin Cooper. I always thought that he had a leap in the chamber. I think all of us did. Ever since he played a lot, I believe, his freshman year. He was in the mix. I don't remember if he started his freshman year. I'm blanking right now. But we always felt like he had the talent to become what he is now. And he is. And this entire front seven is benefiting from both him and Torin York's play right now. Because the discipline and, like Jimbo says, the eyes, the ability to attack the right hole at the right time, it's paying dividends. And this defense has totally transformed from early in this year to now, based partially on their play, but partially on decisions that DJ Durkin has made as far as showing blitzes, when to use pressure, where the pressure should come from. But Edgerrin Cooper and Torin York have to be at the top of the list of reasons why this defense is improving seemingly week to week. So it happened. We're going to lose Edgerrin Cooper this year. I always thought it was possible. He's going to go pro this year. I think Mel Kiper has him as the number one linebacker in the country. Someone tell me. He's number one in some list by Mel Kiper. But he's become that dude and pivotal player, and the defense is getting better week to week. So we feel pretty good about that. And then the last area I highlighted, which has kind of been up and down throughout the year, was corner play. Obviously, it was a big issue versus Alabama. That was the story of the game, the inability to guard the deep ball, specifically by having a out-of-position player playing corner in Josh DeBerry. But versus Tennessee, we did maybe find something. DeBerry's been great in the short game. Great tackler, physical player. That's where he belongs, in the nickel, maybe at safety. He just obviously has a glaring hole in his game, and that's deep one-on-one coverage. Deuce Harmon had a pretty damn good game versus a quarterback that has a pretty damn good deep ball and that was a major issue for this team the week before. So did they find something? Is Deuce Harmon going to start at corner when Bryce Anderson comes back? Are they going to move some stuff around? I don't know. We definitely didn't get the positive answer that I was hopeful for after posing that take before the season. We haven't gotten that answer up until this point in the year, but there may be a path to finding it coming out of that Tennessee game. I'm still happy with the safeties. I think Damani does still have some eye issues, some take the bait issues. But overall, I mean, safeties and nickels, they were never going to be a huge issue. It was always going to be at corner because of just how many players A&M lost at corner to the portal. I think they lost like 6 corners to the portal. So hopefully they found something. They need to have found something because, I mean, Ole Miss is going to make you pay. Shoot, Rattler could make you pay even though he's been terrible on the road and they're a pretty bad team. That's still kind of up in the air right now. So that's to be continued. We'll check back on that one. So now let's quickly talk about the remaining schedule. I think it is so important for A&M to come out offensively and really flex on South Carolina. You're going to see in my pregame video tomorrow, I don't think South Carolina is a very good football team. They were a terrible pass defense team, and then all of a sudden, Missouri ran all over them last week. And with A&M getting hopefully 2 healthy star receivers back at full go in Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas, who've been playing injured, and the front 7 lessening in talent and ability versus South Carolina, that this offense has a chance to go out there, stick to the game plan, gain some confidence, and have a good game. I think that's the most crucial thing going forward into these 5 games. You have to have a get-right game. And if you have a get-right game, your biggest game on the rest of the schedule, in my opinion, is the Ole Miss game. Because you have to go prove to yourself you can win on the road, something that A&M under Jimbo Fisher has not been good at. But I would argue that the crowd and the atmosphere wasn't what caused A&M to lose versus Tennessee. I think it was just mistakes and just an outmatched offensive line with a quarterback who couldn't perform under duress. That is all lightening up, like I said, versus these next two teams. Ole Miss, not the best secondary. The front is pretty good, but it's not going to be what you just faced in Tennessee and Alabama. You have a pretty good matchup there. They've been a run-first team under Lane Kiffin. Obviously, he's going to try to scheme up whatever A&M's weakness is at the time. You really hope they found something in Deuce Harmon and having that true corner out there at the corner opposite Tyreek Chappelle, and they go forward with that, and they've truly found a solution to what the biggest hole on this defense was, and that was that deep ball corner play. There's a path for A&M to win that game. I love that it's at 11 a.m. The crowd probably slow to start, builds up throughout the game, gives A&M a chance to maybe jump on top early. We'll talk way more about that next week. These two games are what set the tone, obviously. The next game's always the most important. But South Carolina's just such an opportunity to get right. And I feel like if they take it, they can run with it, and the sky will be the limit for the next games after. But you have to have a get-right game. You can't come out sloppy versus South Carolina. I mean, come on. You're coming off a bye week. You're getting healthy. You've had your two awful losses. Go out there and get freaking right versus a lackluster team, and then see what you're working with going after that. Obviously, at LSU is going to be really tough. It's a high-powered offense, but their defense is lackluster. So if you are able to build up this offense with the healthy receivers, get your quarterback comfortable, you're not facing those front sevens anymore. I think it's on the table, guys. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you. Some of you want to believe that this thing is done. Jimbo's done. But this team has some fight in it. We're going to see it. I think this team is better than its record indicates. They should have won at least one of those three games. They didn't. Is that the same personality of this team that's going to be persisting going forward? Or are they going to get over that hump? Are they going to perform under adversity? Are they going to perform in these big games that they failed in so far this year? So guys, that's it for the video. I just wanted to go back and see what we thought of this team going into the year, see how we feel now, see what our chances are going forward. My hope is not gone yet, and that is either a great thing or a terrible thing, because when the hope is up, the fall is even greater. I have a feeling we're going to have some fun to end this year out, though. Let's go ruin Lane Kiffin's day. We got to get a win versus Lane at Lane. I'm just saying versus Lane as if it's not even a team. I just want to beat Lane Kiffin. Don't you? Guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow with my South Carolina pregame video. The call-in show this week will be on Thursday, so those of you that are used to it on Wednesday, it's going to be Thursday. It's going to be more of a pregame video because we're so far out of that Tennessee game. You can still talk about that if you want. Whatever you want. We'll take it wherever you want to go. But thanks for being here. Gig 'em.